Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Sunday Talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I'm one of your hosts, Nora Kyle, along with
the other one of your hosts, Mushtaq Ali. He always laughs when I say that. That's the reason I say it.
Because you always say like the other one of your hosts, and yes, it makes me laugh. All right. So, do we want to do a little spiel, or do we want to talk about what we're going to talk about?
We should do our spiel, because if we do our spiel at the end, nobody will listen.
Boo.
Yeah, so we have to do it in the beginning. So here's our spiel. First of all, join us by subscribing. If you would be so kind, we would be so incredibly grateful if you were to join us by subscribing to our YouTube channel. I'm assuming you're watching this on YouTube because everybody here already knows all of this. Yeah, hit the subscribe button down here somewhere, and hit the button that says be alerted when we put stuff up. Also, there's many ways that you can be a part of our circle. If you look down in the description, you will see a link to our mailing list, and that will get you all sorts of interesting stuff. Actually, not very much interesting stuff, because we're not all about spamming you. But we'll let you know what's going on. Give you a link to these talks before it gets out. That's one of two ways you can get links to these talks. You either are in our Facebook group or on our mailing list, and voila, links to the talk.
Yep. And if you want to find us on Facebook, it is the Nine-Sided Circle page, or the Nine-Sided Circle
down below
forum
down below. Yes.
In the link down below. Yes.
And we survive entirely on the begging for alms. So you will notice down below there is a little link that says, you can send us money. And we are happy when you do that, because it keeps the doors open. Actually, it keeps us having doors.
Yeah.
Without your money, you have no doors. Yeah. And there is one other important thing that I want to discuss with everybody. This channel is not monetized, and it never will be. I have found out, though, that Facebook is intending to start putting commercials in some people's videos, whether they're monetized or not. I don't know if that'll happen to us. If it does, I apologize in advance, and I will do my damnedest to figure out some way to make them stop. But, Facebook or YouTube is basically an automaton, an AI sitting in a building not that far from us. And it is heartless, and it does not care what we want. So if commercials pop up, it is not us trying to make money off of you. It is YouTube trying to make money off of you.
Yep. That's a fact.
Yep. So with that grim announcement, that covers pretty much everything we're thinking of at the moment.
Yep. Aside from
coming up this week, by the way, so happy Thanksgiving to those of you who celebrate it, and if you don't, happy Indigenous Peoples Day, because that also happens at the same time.
Well, I think it's Native American Remembrance Day.
That too.
Yes.
And it's also Don't Feed the Pilgrims Day.
Boo.
Yeah.
Yep.
All of these things, they all happen. You have the politically correct dinner of your choice.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Yep. We have my people to thank for this weird ass holiday that is Thanksgiving, with the stereotypical pilgrims and all that stuff.
Yep.
What can you do? All right. So this evening, we are going to revisit Zen concepts through a Sufi lens for the second weekend in a row. And today we are going to be talking about 3 different concepts. And these are, yes, interrelated. This is very important. So these are Fudoshin, Zanshin, and Mushin. And one thing that's important to remember is that these 3 words are always translated as being something mind. Like Mushin is without mind, and Zanshin is remaining mind. But one thing we want to remember is that the character that is used for Shin is the character for heart or core or essence. So not only does this word mean mind, but it includes the heart, and it's almost kind of like a holistic word for the inner essence. So this expands beyond just the intellect, beyond the emotions. It can include the body. So this is important to keep in mind when we go over these concepts. So much talk. Would you like to take it away?
Yeah. So, as Nora was saying, there is this concept of Shin. In Chinese, it's Ji, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, and we have Peilan to tell me that I pronounced it incorrectly. And it's often glossed into English as mind.
It can also represent willpower, motivation, and the ability to act as well. So all of these little flavors are incorporated into this word Shin.
Yeah. Now the prefixes to these, the Fudo, the Zan, and the Mu, all have very particular meanings. But before you understand that they have meanings, you have to understand the whole idea of Shin in a completely new way that has nothing to do with mind as cognition, nothing to do with mind as talking to yourself. And only I just sent the characters for Mushin to Peilan to look at and help me with. What do you see, Peilan?
So I was looking it up online as well. Xin, it's the Chinese word xin. So basically, Shin is S-H-I-N is pretty much spot on
Yep.
in terms of pronunciation. And just as Nora was saying, heart, core, it has by itself, like mind is a very strange translation.
Yeah.
Basically, it's Xing oftentimes is related to that motivating force. So when people talk about desire, it's oftentimes related to Xing. But it's the entire core, it's the entire person, or the entire inners of a person.
Yeah. I oftentimes gloss it into English as essential self. It doesn't have the same ring when you translate it that way, but I think it's closer to the actual meaning. So we're going to start with Fudo. Fudo means immovable. And Fudo is, Fudoshin is the first of 3 attributes that you want to develop. And it's the attribute of being completely present and focused not pinpoint focus and shutting everything else out, but focused in a sense of being able to take everything in all at once and not being pulled by anything, to be completely in balance. Now, interestingly, this is also exactly analogous to the sixth limb of yoga, which is, it's usually translated as concentration. And it's dharana. And it is to allow one's focus to be so steady that nothing shakes your focus. So you're not going to be the one who falls for, look, a bird, and be looking around and losing your focus to what's going on, because then if you fall for that, I get to stick you with my sword. I should mention that swordsmanship is one of the natural theaters for these three terms. These are three aspects that somebody who practices fencing wants to develop, but it's not the only place. So Fudoshin is the ability to stay completely in the present and attend to only what is without distraction. Zanshin, Zan means like remaining. The literal translation for this is remaining mind. And this is the seventh limb of yoga, what they call meditation usually, but is actually dhyana. And it is identical to what us Sufi types call the void practice. When you are in the void practice, you are in Zanshin. So that gives you another way to relate to this. And the last one, Mushin, is the hardest one to understand. Mu in Japanese is a negation, but it's not no. You would not use mu if somebody said, "Are you hungry?" and you weren't, and you say no. You wouldn't use mu for that. It is a negation without a no, is the best way I've ever heard it explained. And it
I
comes
wondered
out
if it could mean wrong question.
Say again?
I wondered if it could mean wrong question.
Wrong question? No.
No?
No.
Oh,
Yeah, Paylan's also shaking her head no.
Another way to think of Mu in Chinese is pronounced Wu, or the character is Wu. It's the same Wu as in Wu Wei from Taoism. You can think of it as none. I know N-E, none.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the most famous koans in all of Zen Buddhism is, does a dog have Buddha nature? I may have quoted this last week. If I didn't, I should have.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. And the answer to it was Mu. And do you remember the little poem that went with it?
No.
Does a dog have Buddha nature? This is the most important question of all. If you say yes or no, you lose your own Buddha nature. So in some ways, this is awareness without a fixation on an object of awareness.
Yeah, and I think as I was researching today, I saw that it comes from the longer phrase, mind without mind, right?
Yeah, Mushin no Shin.
Yep. So that may help give it a little bit more context.
Yeah, and what it is like is as events emerge, you inevitably flow with the event to move yourself through your own intention. So if you were wingsuit gliding, you know what that is, right? You wear this thing that makes you look like Rocky the Flying Squirrel and you jump off the side of a mountain. I don't recommend it, but some people like doing this. You are hurtling down the side of a mountain and you're gliding, sort of. And all of this stuff comes up. And the only way you can survive is to be in a state of mushin, to be in a state of complete flow, where your body just adapts itself to the spaces between the rocks and you happily slide through them and land safely at the bottom. Or you fall out of the state and you die. So there's some motivation. And this is equivalent to the eighth limb of yoga, which is Samadhi. And just as in the Yoga Sutras, after Patanjali goes through the 8 limbs, he says that the last 3 limbs, when practiced together, form the samyama, the great practice. And years and years and years and years ago, when I was studying Japanese martial arts, specifically Aikido, because this is where this came up a lot, they had the same idea that when your mind became immovable, when you were witness to the void, witness to the empty space, just witness to the remaining, and you moved into that state of mind, no mind, then you could really do Aikido. Up until then, you were just dancing about and maybe falling down a lot. Does that make sense?
I'm seeing you nod tentatively, Peilon. What are you thinking about?
Oh, I'm just going through my head for the Bagua stuff that I've been learning from Mushtaq.
Yeah.
And what Mushtaq just said in terms of you need to, if you don't have all 3, then you're just kind of flailing around. Agree.
Well, sometimes you got to do a little bit of flailing around to get to something more. So there's something to be said about that.
So, what has this got to do with Sufism? Or what has Sufism got to do with this? Important question. Now that we've bored people enough that the uninitiated have probably wandered off, we can get down to the real meat of the thing. You will notice that there are 3 of these things here.
Yes.
Does that remind you of anything?
Well, I'm thinking the 3 forces, right?
Yes.
Yes. I noticed you put it on the triangle.
Yes. Was that unsubtle of me?
Well, I think it was a good choice because it was a good priming device to think in those terms.
I tried to make it look like brush strokes so it would throw people off.
All right, so let's expand on that.
Let's expand on that. Each one of these represents one of the 3 primal forces: the affirming force, the denying force, and the reconciling force. Which ones do you think are which?
Aaron says, it seems like Aikido would have gotten that component from the use it has against armed attackers.
Yes, and even more, the use of swords in its art. Kendo still uses these terms, though a lot of places have different definitions for what these are. And everybody's definitions but ours is, of course, not correct. I almost said that with a straight face. But let's take Fudoshin. Which one of these do you think? Which one of the three forces does Fudoshin represent? Don't everybody answer at once. Aaron says affirming. I have one for affirming.
All right, who thinks it's affirming? Any hands? Any guesses? Who thinks it's denying? Yeah, I'm leaning towards denying myself. Who thinks it's reconciling? All right, people aren't being brave. That's okay.
Yeah.
All right, Aaron says, or reconciling.
And Ilmar thinks that he would like another shot of whiskey.
Thumbs up on that one. Amen, he says.
Okay, so for me, this one always strikes me as affirming.
Huh.
Because it says, I am here. I am totally awake to this present moment, and I am here. I'm not anywhere else, and you cannot distract me from here. Here is where I am, and here's where I'm going to stay. And when you move, I will be here to be witness to your movement.
I can see that, yeah.
I tend to default into thinking in terms of swordsmanship with these, because that's my... Are you laughing at me?
I'm laughing at you, yes.
That's where I learned it the most.
Yep.
You know, if I had been into flower arranging, I could talk about these three forces in terms of flower arranging.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't have any flowers. All I had was swords.
Well, Aaron is on board with that. He says, Fudo gives me an impression of affirming.
Yep.
I have a comment.
Yes.
So this one for me, it feels more like denying just because of, it reminds me of attention.
Mm.
And so for me, the way I understand this one is that my attention shall not be moved to something else. So I'm seeing like the opposite side of the coin.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how I'm envisioning it or sensing it, is like not those things, just that. So.
And here's the thing. There is an objective truth to this. None of us know it. Not a single one of us here, not anybody listening. You know, the greatest of all Sufi masters did not know it. Mr. Gurdjieff did not know it. Nobody knows it. We can only play with it, which is how it's supposed to be.
I like that. Yes. So with that in mind, carry on.
And we have Zanshin, which y'all can relate to because, like I said, it's basically the void practice.
The first void practice, right? Where it's the space between holding the space
It's all of them. First one, second one. That's something I didn't mention in the announcements. There will be Void Practice Part 2.0 coming out in the next week or so. And anybody who is on the forum will get a link to it. Or if you email me and go, I don't want to be on your damn forum, but I really want to see this, I might send you a link.
You got options.
You do got options. And I've decided to put it up on the forum so that people won't think that I'm trying to trick them into joining the mailing list. I mean, that's what you do. You could have this free gift if you give me your email address. That's basic marketing ploys, and we try and avoid that.
Mm-hmm, we do.
So if you want to give us your email address, you're welcome. If you want the next part of the Void Practice, you're welcome to that either by joining the forum or emailing me. And I promise if you email me, I will not give your email address to the Republican Party with a note saying that I really want to donate to everything that you're doing. Where was I? Oh, yes. Zanshin. Zanshin is, to me, it is the denying force because it's the passive. You just open yourself up to everything that is space. One of the wonderful things about this practice is it makes it really, really easy and quick to perceive even small movements. So it's literally when you pull your attention from all objects so that all that remains is on space. To me, that's Zanshin.
Aaron agrees.
Aaron is
smart. Well, Aaron has that martial arts sensibility. You guys share that.
He will have experienced this in a different way from sorting, but one that is equally real, because when you're rolling with somebody, you have to have all three of these to be perfect about it. Palin just walked through a hole in the sky. That's very So that brings us to the third one, which is Mushin. Mushin is the hardest to define. And the only way you can really know it is to be in it. And so I'm going to have to get metaphorical here. Create similes. Mushin is when you are so completely in the flow and you're fencing with one of your friends, and your sword just moves up and through the empty spaces and places its point on your friend and makes the touch without you even thinking about it. It just happens. It happens because it is inevitable that happens, because you are so in the flow. You are moving within the Tao. Words break down at this point. And this is the practice of Samadhi. People think, oh, Samadhi is a state, but it's not. Samadhi is not a state. It's a practice. And it's a practice that in most cases requires movement. And in the West, it requires risking your life. jumping off of tall buildings or off of the sides of mountains wearing Rocky the Flying Squirrel suits, or trying to surf 100-foot waves, or skateboarding down Mount Everest, or any of these crazy things that people do that you cannot survive without entering into this state.
Yes. Aaron says in reference to a sparring scenario, it's almost like you can't not make the intended touch. It's that intuitive, that like automatic almost.
Yeah, I imagine for Aaron, it's like the other guy just falls into your rear naked choke with you not having to do anything.
Mm.
And
then Palin says in reference to people doing all kinds of crazy death-defying feats, lots of people die doing that.
It's true. Lots of
flow.
People do die doing that. That's the downside of this. This is why I had never been interested in finding flow through extreme sports. I mean, I found flow through extreme sports back in my younger years, but it's not something that I got addicted to, because thank God there are other ways to do it.
Aaron says, referencing again sparring, it just happens and you witness it and participate in it simultaneously.
Exactly right. That's what we're talking about. So, thoughts and or questions about this? Ilmar, I have a bet with myself that you can apply these 3 principles to tango.
Not really. I mean, I probably shouldn't have had that whiskey.
I don't know. You kind of fun with
this reminds me very much of some academic discussions about the meanings of terms, but and I really don't have much to add to this at all either. But, so I'm gonna sit on the sidelines at the moment.
Okay, but think about tango and how this might relate to that perfect dance.
I shall do that, especially if the COVID thing ever goes out. I can do some tango again.
Oh,
I know.
I have not been able to stab any of my friends for months now.
One thing I am a little curious about, one of the really rather interesting Western dudes that was rather an early bird on this was Merrill Wolff, and who was a mathematician and kind of a yogi from I think it's for a while he taught at Stanford, but he wrote some very interesting books called Consciousness Without an Object.
Yeah, I remember reading those decades ago. I haven't heard that name in a really long time.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it for ages either, but I probably should go back and look at it again, because
I was just thinking that myself, because I'm probably not as stupid as I was in my 20s and 30s.
But it sounds like he was talking about some of this stuff too, and I just don't remember at the moment anymore what he was, where he was coming from. It's just that even the title of it's like a 3 volumes here. Even the title intrigued me, at the time. Consciousness Without an Object, and I'm assuming it's not just that there's a blank field, but that one is not objectifying, making objects out of portions of what one is experiencing. But I couldn't swear to that because it's been too long. And if it is that, if it's a matter of relating to the world without creating objects and thus the subject-object distinction, would that fit any of these three?
Yeah, that tends to be to me, that's the state of Mushin.
Okay.
Yeah, where you are not moving through a world of objects, you're moving through a world of action. You're participating in it, flowing through it, and not objectifying any of it.
And consequently not creating that subject-object distinction.
Yep.
Getting caught up in some idea of the subject, Yeah.
Yep. God, thanks for reminding me of those books. It's been years since I've thought of that.
Yeah, he's an interesting dude. Very interesting dude.
Yeah, I just wrote it down so that we will remember to take a look at it later. Thanks.
And now back to my whiskey stupor here.
Well done. All right. Aaron has a question. Do you think there are quote unquote, anti versions of these specific states?
That's a really interesting question. And I suspect that the answer is yes. I remember in reading Rise of Superman, which is a book about flow and extreme athletics. Was it Jamie Wheel who wrote that, or the other guy? Kotler. It was, Stephen Kotler who wrote that. And he talks about the dark side of flow. And it suggests to me that there are like polar opposites to these states. And none of them would be pretty. I mean, we can look at what's going on in our country right now with the soon-to-be former president so clinging to the object of his desire, which is the Oval Office, that he will do anything to keep it. That seems like it would be the opposite of some of these things. What an unpleasant thought.
And so
the dark side of the Force.
So which would it be an opposite to? The Mushin?
That's a good question. I have not actually given that thought any brain time, though I will now, because it seems like it's probably important.
Well, Aaron suggests, he says, I kind of think of deer in the headlights and hyper-aggression as candidates.
I could see that.
In a way, it's a very single-minded state.
Yep. This is going to require some thinking. This will probably end up as a Sunday talk at some point if I can ever get Noor to figure it out for me. And then...
Well, I mean, my mind is going to be ticking away around this too. I mean, we're touching on some interesting stuff, and it's cool to see that kind of unfold in real time as we're all sitting here. So I will make sure to jot that down as something to meditate on. So thanks, Aaron.
Yeah, you have made us think, which is only not exactly super hard, but harder than many things.
All right, there we go. There. I have taken that and put it aside.
Zainab, what do you think?
I just had a quick question on the order of the three. Is it always 1, 2, 3, or they can move around?
There's not any particular order. They could even be simultaneous.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the 6 different.
Yeah, and it's good that you did, because that's something that bears a little thought. What conclusions have you drawn?
It's the same as 3 forces, so it can have 6 possibility of different.
Yeah. How you would enter into them or activate each of these things or flow into each of these things or whatever one does with each of these things.
So I was thinking if it's in the affirming, denying, reconciling order, then it would be more the creation side.
Could be. Yeah, the involution.
So can you ask the question again?
My question to you, what do you think? That was my question to you. Let me try this.
Maybe
What did you
Omar's
think?
drunkenness is infectious. Alright. Okay.
Aaron said something also.
He did, yes. So, Aaron said, in Mushtak's wingsuit example, it seems like all 3 are needed to survive. So, Mushin, Fudoshin, and Zanshin.
I would think so. I have never myself been stupid enough to jump off the side of a mountain in a Rocky the Squirrel suit, so I can't tell you for sure. But from secondhand descriptions, it sounds like it.
Yeah, I definitely think these are almost overlapping, potentially simultaneous, or at least they have the potential to be simultaneous processes.
Yeah, and I think ideally you want simultaneous.
That's a lot to hold at one time.
Yeah, it is. It's sort of like some practices that we do.
I was going to say, I bet it takes practice.
Yuck, 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 yuck.
Yeah, and Aaron says, you know, it seems like all 3 are needed to survive, or at least to have the best shot. Absolutely. God, I can't imagine, you know, base jumping without wanting to have a taste for each of these things right then and there.
It would be a little freaky.
Wouldn't the idea of making these a practice almost by itself not be a Mushin situation? Because making it a practice, you become an agent and consequently presumably have a certain identity that is going to now practice the void practice, or is going to
It's
practice.
not a matter of making it a practice. It's a matter of allowing it to emerge through your practice.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
That makes better sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And the moment you start dwelling on it being there, you've lost it. So.
And why have you lost it?
Well, because you're distracted by it. You're pulled into, you made it into an object of your attention at that point.
And in that process, you've made yourself into an object too, right? You become
Probably so.
that which needs to have a certain development, you know, that which needs to reach a certain goal, etc., right?
Well, I think that's, for many of us, that's a constant struggle, is like, you know, we start kind of, instead of being in the practice, doing the practice, we start like conceptualizing about whatever it is we're doing, and then we're essentially not doing it anymore.
Right. Which is why the notion, I think, sometimes that just your daily life is your meditative practice, you know. to the I mean, it can be at least, you know. And yeah.
Right. Yep.
Oh, you're agreeing at some joke there, look like.
I'm just laughing at us, you know, sitting in comfortable silence together.
Silence. Letting it all flow.
Why not? Yes.
Why not? Have another glass of whiskey.
I'd love to. Thanks for offering. What do you? Yeah. What are you thinking about, Mushtaq? It's your turn to be on the spot.
My turn.
Yes.
I'm thinking. I don't have much more to say about this.
Yeah.
This is one of those things that is in the doing, not in the talking about.
Yep. Yep.
So anybody else got thoughts? Anybody we missed? Nancy, you've been very, very quiet tonight.
This is something I just don't have much to say about.
Hmm.
Yeah, and yet you might find some of this in your Qigong practice.
Conceivably, not yet.
Well, actually, you know, Nancy, I don't know if you did anything with that metal element stuff that he was doing, but the metal element basically sounds to me very much like Fudoshin. You know, I mean, you know, the steady presence of you know, being there. Mm-hmm. So I suspect that there might well be some parallels there. You know.
I suspect in anything we do when we're bringing, you know, when we're not just doing it mindlessly, we're going to see these taking place. Each of these things is going to be taking place in any of the activities we do in a day. And same goes for intention, attention, and presence as well. So in a very similar way, we can take note of what we're bringing to an activity.
So I guess one way these things could be useful is to sort of highlight areas where we're weak at, right? I mean, either we're not able to hold a position, or we're, you know, able to, you know, we're creating a subject-object dichotomies and so forth, you know, and this is...
Yeah.
Because
Are you easily distracted?
Easily distracted, yes, exactly.
Yeah. I was wondering whether there are triplets that just aren't well modeled by affirming, denying, and reconciling.
Nah, none. Never found one. It all depends on how clever you are.
Okay.
If you're clever enough, you can fit anything into this model.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to sit with the affirming and denying. And the more I sit with it, the more I can see, you know, the active versus the passive, that kind of thing. So, yeah. Yeah. Erin has a question. How does Fudoshin relate to Fudo Myo, if anyone might know, the deity? Actually, yes. There is a relationship there.
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead, tell us about that.
So I believe that this phrase is borrowed from his name, right? Of this deity.
Mm-hmm. Fudo, the unmovable.
Yeah.
What Aaron is talking about is a Japanese guardian deity. He has a sword in his right hand. It's usually in the Chinese style, but with a vajra, a dorje grip to it. And in his left hand, he has a rope. And he stands guard at temples. And he looks scary as hell, but he's considered incredibly benevolent.
Yep. He's kind of got this sitting Buddha posture with like this angry look on his face, this giant frown. And he seems menacing, but really he is this kind of peaceful warrior type figure. Oni face, yes, yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and the sword cuts through illusion and the rope binds evil.
Mm-hmm. So there you go, Aaron. Definitely a good catch there.
All right. Well, that's all I got to say about this. Any last thoughts from anybody?
I think I'm good. I think Ilmar should set up shots for everyone. And we'll see him after the session to take those shots, right? Yep. All right, everyone.
All right. Good night, folks.
Good night.
Everybody wave because we're on Brady Bunch mode right now. So
bye.
See
you next week.
Yeah.